First Things, episode number 28.
I seem to be lost.
And so you're working around the clock so you don't take time for yourself to feel like an actual human being.
I used to feel like no matter how hard I worked, I was just spinning my wheels.
Trying to be perfect, we try to have everything in place at one point in time, and you can't.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to First Things, the podcast dedicated to practical productivity based on modern research. My name is Brandon Vaughn, and it's my goal to help you apply productive solutions to your life to help you live with less stress, greater passion, and amazing results. We have just finished up our series over procrastination, where we were going through Neil Fiore's book called The Now Habit, and today I had hoped to do an interview with Neil about the topics of The Now Habit, but Neil seems to have disappeared on me. I'm not sure what's happened with him. I hope he's okay. I hope nothing bad has happened in any way, because we were communicating quite frequently for a while, and lately I just haven't been able to get in touch with him. So if at some point in the future I do finally get back in touch with him, we will do a personal interview with him here. But I did dig around in my archives, and I found an old interview with Neil that I don't believe that you can find anywhere. So I'm going to play that interview for you today because it applies as a summary of everything we've talked about on The Now Habit. In this interview, Neil's going to talk about the various facets of the Now Habit, and I think you will really enjoy this as a summary of what we have talked about before we go on to other topics. Now, just a warning, this show will be longer than usual. I usually shoot for a 30 to 40 minute type of show, although I have occasionally gone over into the 50-minute mark. But this interview is quite long, and it's going to make this show longer than probably my longest show to date. But instead of cheating you out and making you wait a whole week before you hear the second part, I just decided to give the whole thing to you all at once. So keep that in mind. This will be a longer episode, but you have the entire interview with you. Now, I'm excited. Next week, I will play for you a great interview that I had with Timothy Moser of aceproductivity.com, where we are going to talk about how to see your life as an experiment. I had a great conversation with Timothy. He interviewed me for his podcast, which is called Ace Productivity, and I also interviewed him for mine as well. And just one last mention, if you're listening to me, I would very much appreciate the big fans of this show if you would consider going to firstthingsproductivity.com/yes, Y-E-S, firstthingsproductivity.com/yes, and voting for me to be an instructor on Creative Live. I mentioned this in the last episode, and this will be the last episode I ask of this, but if you might consider going on there and voting for me as one of their instructors. In particular, if you would consider voting for me twice, one for a instructional class on overcoming procrastination. I would love to take the message that we've been talking about here for several weeks now and helping people online for free. And if you might also consider a secondary one, then to mention about a statistics course for their business channel. So if you might consider that, especially those of you who are real big fans of the show, and this is for anyone in the world, not just anyone in the U.S., because anyone in the world can watch Creative Live. So if you're listening to me outside of the U.S., please also consider voting for me as well. I would really appreciate that. So now let's get into this interview with Neil, and I hope that you will really enjoy it and benefit from it as a great summary of what we've been talking about over the last weeks.
Neil Fiore, Ph.D., is a licensed psychologist, trainer, and author of 4 books. Dr. Fiore, and I hope I'm saying her name right.
Yes.
A former president of the Northern California Society of Clinical Hypnosis, has conducted training at the Esalen Institute, California School of Professional Psychology, Summit Hospital, Smithsonian Institute, Levi Strauss, UCSF, and Stanford, and has attended seminars led by Dr. Milton H. Erickson. Selected by Boardroom Reports as one of their top 10 self-help gurus, Dr. Fiore is firmly established as one of America's top productivity experts. Dr. Fiore is also the author of The Now Habit, that's the one that pulled me in, a strategic program for overcoming procrastination and enjoying guilt-free play. Also the author of Awaken Your Strongest Self, Break Free of Stress, Inner Conflict, and Self-Sabotage. He continues to run seminars, training programs that combine the use of hypnosis and other therapeutic devices to obtain peak performance and productivity. And if I'm understanding correctly, you got another book that's set to come out this year as well. So welcome to the call, Neil.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Velma.
So as I shared earlier, The Now Habit is the book that kind of pulled me in to ask you to come and play on our show because it has to deal with overcoming procrastination. And as I shared to you before the call, I have been a master procrastinator.
Uh-huh.
And as I said before, I know I'm not alone, so I know there's a lot of people out there who would love to find out more information about this. I know for myself, as I've been watching myself, because I do that a lot, I have found that a good chunk of my procrastination comes in when I move into overwhelm.
Yes.
And then I do things to distract myself, and then I feel really crummy for doing that because then I'm even further behind. Is that what you found has happened with a lot of people that you've worked with in this arena?
Yes, especially these days when there are so many distractions like the internet and cell phones and so on, where we're just constantly available. It's like being in one of those martial arts kung fu movies for everyone. Where you're being attacked by 5 or 10 things at once. Mm-hmm. Your adrenaline is really high, and you become the deer in the headlights, or in your case, maybe the moose in the headlights in Canada. But you're stuck, and that's the word that people use. I'm stuck. Mm-hmm. And psychodynamically, that's what procrastination is. It's being split into you have to, but I don't want to, driving with the brakes on. And this sense of overwhelm. I've got so many things I have to get done. So, in listening to people, thousands of people over the last 30 years, I have noticed that instead of being, overwhelmed with all of these things, I have to be like a kung fu fighter and give one of those karate shouts and, give one of those, ha, I don't want to break your eardrum, but I want to give one of those blood-curdling growls and focus now on what I can do now. Thus the name of the book, The Now Habit, what I can start on now for 15 to 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. I used to say 30 minutes, but these days, 15 minutes is about all people can do, uninterrupted quality focus for 15 minutes. And by the way, I've written 6 books.
6 now?
I've written 6 books, yeah. And I never ask myself to get a book done. I never say you have to finish this book. I always say, when can I start for 30 minutes?
Ooh.
And I start typically 30 minutes before breakfast. I fight to get another 30 or 60 minutes in before lunch if possible, because I do see clients and I do coaching. By the way, my website is neilfiore.com. I'm sure you put all of that out there.
Oh, yes.
NEILFIORE.com. Nice Italian name. And I then attempt to get another hour in before dinner and then another half hour or hour before going to sleep. And it usually totals up about 3 hours a week or 15 hours a week is all it takes. 15 hours a week, not 100, not 60, but if you can find a part-time job, 15 hours a week for a year or 9 months, you can write a book or learn to play the piano or perhaps learn Italian.
I like that shift in words, though.
Yeah.
Instead of, have to, it's, when can I start with a half an hour or 15 minutes?
Yeah. And let me just give you the 5 phrases that I've heard procrastinators say.
Okay. I'm sure I've said
all. So the first 2 are adequate for procrastination, and that is, I have to finish. Now think about it. Have to automatically means you don't want to. Mm-hmm. So hypnosis is an understanding of the proper language to gain the cooperation of your mind and body. Have to will get the opposite. It'll get resistance. It means you don't want to. I'm going to force you, or some larger authority figure like the government is going to force you to do something you don't want. So you should rebel and resist. Right. So it's totally have to is completely counterproductive. Finish. You have to finish. Well, where's finish? Finish is in the vague future. You have not pointed the workers in the direction about when and where and on what to start,
Mm-hmm.
you see. So I have to finish something big and important, do it perfectly, and suffer with no play, no fun in my life. So I took those 5 statements that I was hearing continually from procrastinators and I shifted them around and I said the opposite of that. And what I see among producers and what I learned myself when I was in graduate school and had to overcome my own procrastination was that instead of have to, I choose, or at least I am going to start, not finish. So I'm going to replace each of those statements. Have to, finish something big and important perfectly, and suffer with I choose to start for 15 minutes on a rough draft, and I have plenty of guilt-free play in my schedule.
Mm.
What I discovered was those people who, like myself, completed a book or a doctoral dissertation in less than a year were skiing. They had exercise in their schedule. They had dates and lunches and dinners with friends. They had a social life. They had a physical life. In your language, they had a mind, body, spirit connection.
Mhm.
They were living fully. They were not procrastinating on living, and they were putting in 15 to 20 hours a week on their AAA top priority project, that project that would move their life forward.
How do you decide if something is a AAA project?
Well, you usually know what that is. I mean, that's one of the first questions I ask my coaching clients. What is the AAA thing that is going to move your life forward? First off, it has certain characteristics. It's going to take more than an hour to do. It's probably going to take over 400 hours to do. In my case, writing a book could be 1,000 hours. A doctoral dissertation could be 1,000 to 1,500 hours. But it's a big thing that will change your life. Sometimes it's completing a college degree or a law degree.
Right.
All right. What are you doing now to face that project? It could be building your home, but it's not quick and dirty. The quick and dirty stuff is relatively easy. You can get it done in less than 15 to 30 minutes. It could be a call, it could be an email. It could take a couple of hours at the most. The big project is the thing that is often connected with money or advancement, or at the very least, passion, like learning a skill, like learning to play the violin or the piano, or finishing your book.
Now, you talked about scheduling guilt-free play. You actually talk about scheduling that first, don't you?
I do, and I call it the unschedule. So the unschedule says and by the way, you can get this from my website, neilfiore.com, under free articles. And it's contained in the book, The Now Habit, Overcoming Procrastination and Enjoying Guilt-Free Play. And it is, first you just look at a schedule. And the ones that I provide give you 24 hours for 7 days. That's 168 hours total for each week. You fill in your sleep time. It's counterintuitive, I know, but you fill in your sleep time. You fill in your exercise time. Some people use an Excel sheet and they put these sorts of things in a particular color, green or red, for example. So I've got my sleep time, I have my meal time, I have my time at the gym or my exercise class or my yoga class or my meditation or my spiritual practices or my church, my Sabbath, my Shabbat, whatever that is for you. You're filling that in so that you want a certain amount of free time guaranteed. It's legitimate. It's on your schedule. Only then do you fill in time on your AAA and AA level priority projects. For me, I would be filling in as with a time clock, or what lawyers call billable hours. I would be filling in point 0.5 before breakfast. For me, from 8 to 8:30 or 7:30 to 8 o'clock a.m., I'm filling in point 0.5 after I've completed. I do not allow myself to get up until I've completed 30 minutes. I then have, this is extra now, I've seeded my mind, my subconscious mind, with thoughts about the project. Plus, I've gotten a procrastination inoculation shot. I have faced fear. I have faced self-doubt. I have faced a blank page. And the ideas begin to come to you during the day. You are kind of daydreaming, and the subconscious mind, or the night shift, the dreaming mind, is working for you during the day while you're doing other things that are lower priority. Then throughout the day, you choose to show up. You choose to start for 15 to 30 minutes, and you take credit only for those periods of time, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45, an hour and a half. I generally do not go more than 90 minutes without taking a break to deal with lower priority tasks or lunch or stretch. Mm-hmm. And you attempt to total that up for approximately 3 hours a day. Now, if you think about it, someone who is working in a regular corporation 40 or 50 hours a week, if in fact they are getting 3 to 4 hours in per day, approximately 20 hours a week, on the major bottom line tasks of that organization, they are doing twice as much as anyone else who's going to meetings and talking on the phone and buying tickets to the theater and playing the stock market on their computer. Mm-hmm. I mean, most work situations do not involve 4 hours total per day of focused time.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. And you are taking credit for it. So the first thing you're doing with the unschedule is you are noticing and committing to your guilt-free playtime. The time that, by the way, you would fail at if, in fact, you thought you were going to work 8 hours on something. You're going to take lunch. You're going to have a telephone call. So you'll continually feel like a failure if you put too high an expectation on yourself. And the interesting thing is, you do not need to put in 40 hours a week to complete a book in a year. You only need 15 to 20 to complete a book in 9 to 12 months, in my experience. Wow. And I've worked with a lot of writers. Okay. So the first thing is that you are committing to your free time, your leisure time. You are not procrastinating on living. That means you are less resentful about work. In fact, it even might make you eager to start. So you choose to start whenever you can, and you begin to, in the second case, use your unschedule as a time clock to record quality, uninterrupted time on your top priority projects. There might be 2 or 3 of them. There shouldn't be more than that. Is that making sense?
I mean, it's making a lot of sense. I know what I'm really appreciating about listening to you is the little bits and bites that I figured out on my own. Mm-hmm. And I'm really noticing that and appreciating that. My husband and I drop off our son to school, and what is automatically scheduled, unless something really, really important comes up, we automatically go to the gym as soon as we drop our son off.
Excellent.
That is scheduled in. When I wake up in the morning, I do my meditation. That is scheduled in.
Lovely.
I have my lunch at 1 o'clock,
mm-hmm.
and that is scheduled in. So a good chunk of things that I know are what keep me going are scheduled in now, and I didn't used to do it that way. I used to try and fit it around what I felt I had to get done, and 9 times out of 10, when I had almost scheduled in my time for the things that I had to get done, I farted around.
Yes.
You know, and
Right.
and so I didn't end up getting everything that I needed to get done in that amount of time. So then when it came to my evening time, I'm feeling guilty because I didn't get the things that I had to get done.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really enjoying my evenings. So, I mean, everything that you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done that.
And now, for your listeners, and your readers, I really want to point out that you talk in terms of getting things done. In my opinion, that is counterproductive internal language. That is not effective leadership language. So, and because again, you're pointing toward getting done, and the body can't get there. The body's a realist. The body's always in the present, as you know from meditating. So, if let's make an analogy, if in fact you were talking to construction workers about building a house, and you said you have to get it done by September, they would stand around because you haven't given them an address. You haven't given them a time to start. You haven't told them when they get paid. So you must say when to start, where to start, what to do, and in a sense, what are when do I get paid? What is my reward for this? Yeah. So and we know, by the way, from the National Institutes of Health in the States, that programs that have worked for stop smoking, eating healthy, exercising more, and losing weight, those programs had the participants write down when they would start, what they would do, and where they would do it. What, when, and where. And some of those programs had what I think is very psychologically sophisticated, and very sophisticated according to what we know now about neuropsychology and the brain and neuroscience and the human forehead, the prefrontal cortex, which is the human brain, and the ability to choose as opposed to act like an animal from instinct. We know that you ask them when you will start, where you will start, what you will do, and the sophisticated part is even if, as they say in the Alcoholics Anonymous programs, even if there is hunger, anger, I feel lonely, I feel tired or stressed. That's HALTS, HALTS. HALTS. All those excuses, all those perhaps valid reasons, even though those may come up, I still am choosing to show up. Even if I'm late, even if I don't get started as I promised at 10 a.m., I still will start even if it's 10:15 or 10:20. I'm choosing to start. I am starting. Yeah. Is that making sense?
Oh, totally. It absolutely is making sense.
So one of the major things that will help people shift is noticing their current language and the way in which it overwhelms them and the way it evokes a sense of internal conflict and rebellion. I have to finish. I have to finish a lot of things. I have to finish all of these projects. That will totally create anxiety, because anxiety is stuck energy trying to get into the future. It will create rebellion and resistance, because have to means you don't want to. You're being forced to. Right? And it can create a sense of lower motivation because your energy is stuck. There's an inner conflict between have to versus I don't want to, as opposed to a third place, which is I choose. This is making sense, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I use I choose for a lot of different things because of the fact that it doesn't set off my BS meter.
I have a couple of different examples of how that worked for me. But one of them is when I needed to get a root canal.
Yeah.
And I was saying to myself for several days, I have to get a root canal. And in doing that, I became I must have looked unusually depressed because colleagues were saying, "What's wrong, Neil?" And every time I said, "I have to get a root canal," they commiserated and go, "Oh, no wonder you look depressed." Because basically you're saying, you are a victim. You have to do something you don't want to. This is going to be painful, isn't it? Yes, my life is about doing things I don't want to. I have to. Repeat it over and over again. Your head is bowed, your shoulders are bowed, you're walking around shuffling instead of walking forward in life with energy. Well, when I got to the dental surgeon, he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at an x-ray, and he said, "Well, got bad news. I think you're going to lose the tooth. I don't think we can do the root canal. But let me take another x-ray." He took another x-ray. He came back in 5 minutes or so. And he says, "Good news. We can do the root canal." And I brightened up and said, "Great. We can do the root canal." I go, "Wait a minute. I'm a psychologist. What just happened? I just shifted from depression and I have to get a root canal to give me the root canal." My God, I have a cure for depression, which is choice again. He showed me something worse, losing the tooth. Now we can do the root canal. And there I am, all cheered up all of a sudden after 3 days of depression. Give me the root canal. Let me make this the best experience I can. Maybe I'll get really relaxed, Maybe I'll do some of my self-hypnosis and not experience any kind of discomfort or pain. And it became a challenge and a choice. And that is the power of choice. Choice is a third place. It is neither have to nor want to. And by the way, I want a college degree. Doesn't say much to me because it doesn't say if in fact you're committing to the work. I want the goal. I want to lose 20 pounds. It doesn't say anything to me about your commitment to start today, eating more fruit and vegetables, and when you're going to exercise. It doesn't say anything about commitment to the path to that goal.
No, it's all it's doing is talking about a projection into the future, and that's not now.
Well, you can project into the future, but you must back time into the present from the top of the mountain down to the trailhead as you start your hike, or from having in your head, giving your brain, again, this is talking about effective self-management and effective self-communication. If, in fact, I only say to myself, the flight is at 6:10, that could sabotage me because 6:10 is pretty irrelevant these days. I must be at the airport for security at 5.
Even earlier if you're flying international.
Yeah, maybe it's 4. I must back time from 6:10 back to approximately 4:30 or 4, and then I must consider traffic at the airport, my commute, my packing, my finding my tickets, and so on, all the way, perhaps to the prior day, perhaps to that evening. And I must know when to leave my home, which could be 2 o'clock. So 6:10 is totally confusing to the mind and body or the workers. I must say when to leave. In fact, I do that. Whenever I have an appointment, I put down when to leave, and I calculate in the real world of today, given the current traffic and all the other things I'm trying to let go of, including telephone calls at the last minute, when must I leave? That's a start time. Leave time and start time is the same. It tells the workers, in this case, your own mind and body, when to begin the project, when to start. It's very clear. You become an effective manager.
What I think I hear you saying is it's one thing to project something into the future, but if what you want to do is still bring yourself back into the now, and what's my first step?
Yes, you must make it clear what the first step is. Otherwise, you have not communicated effectively to the workers. In fact, you've given them some confusion because the future doesn't exist. You've created anxiety as the body tries to get into that imaginary virtual reality. You have stuck energy. That's why the karate shout is so effective, because it says, do this now. Start here.
See, and I did that this week. I was looking at my week ahead because, as I shared, I'm coming back from a 4-week experience and coming back into work. So I'm looking at my list of stuff to do and going, oh, I got all of these things to do, and I don't know if I'm going to get them done in time, and it's really stressful and stuff like that. I did that to myself on Monday.
Yeah.
And then I went, okay, so what can I do right now?
Mm-hmm.
And then it just got me started. And will I get everything accomplished this week? I'm not sure, but I'm getting stuff accomplished, and I'm picking what I can do right now, and I'm taking action on that. Another thing that I've always loved to do is I play with words.
Yes.
Because certain words don't make me feel good, and other words will make me feel good. So one of the words that I've chosen over the years is I don't work, I plurk. Play plus work equals plurk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then for me, what it did was it instead of it being work and that heavy word, it's something fun. Anything that I do has got to have a play element in it, and then I will really enjoy it, and I know I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent. So when there are things that are boring in life, and hopefully that's less than 25% of your job, as is with mine, because I love everything that I do. I love my work as a psychologist, as a speaker, as a coach, as an author. Yet there's a certain amount of paperwork involved that I don't want to. A part of me doesn't want to. The 2-year-old in me does not want to. So I have trained myself to go from my default, I don't want to that's all right. You don't have to want to. I will choose. And I go from my default of you have to thank you very much. I'm in charge of my life. I didn't mean to leave this little 6-year-old dictator running my life, who, by the way, has learned the have-tos in order to fit in and not be embarrassed at school. I will choose. I live my life from choice. Now, choice is a third place, and it is a mature place, and it is an evolved place. It only exists in the human forehead. We know this from neuropsychology. I did not know this when I first wrote The Now Habit. It is in my new Now Habit, The Now Habit at Work, which is coming out in August through John Wiley and Son, and is also in Awaken Your Strongest Self. This sense of the neuroscience of the human brain and the human forehead, the ability to choose. Now, if you read The Now Habit, you may know the paratrooper story, because I was 22 and I was in the paratroopers, going through paratrooper school, rather. And for graduation, you get to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And I was so focused on getting through 3 weeks of running around in Georgia in the hot sun, doing dozens of push-ups every day, that I didn't even think about having to jump out of an airplane. And even there, my language turns to have to, you see. Have to jump out. They're going to make me jump. And that's exactly what I was doing on graduation day. I'm standing in the plane. I'm about the 12th man back on the right side. They open up the door, and they expect us in about a minute or two to start jumping. And I'm saying to myself, counterproductive messages, I have to. And immediately there's the inner conflict. Forget about it. There's no way I'm going to jump out of this airplane. But I have to. Otherwise, the sergeant will put me in jail. I'll be court-martialed. I don't want to. This is crazy. And I have this inner dialogue going on, And I'm from New Jersey. And so, especially at that time, I had that Robert De Niro kind of accent going for me. I call it the dueling De Niros. You have to. Forget about it. There ain't no way I'm going to jump, inside of my head. And with all of this going on, I truly had an extremely high stress level. My knees were shaking. I was nauseous. My palms were sweaty, my heart was racing, and I could not make myself move. I was driving with the brakes on. These two powerful forces in inner conflict fighting each other. I could not move. It was a perfect model for procrastination. I was stuck. But I watched the first man get in the door, and he did it very counterproductively. In order to jump out of a plane going 150 miles an hour, you must put your hands on the outside, bend your knees, pull yourself out through that prop blast of 150 miles an hour. He put his hands on the inside. And I said to myself at that moment, because I was watching him very carefully, I said, he's ambivalent. he's not fully committed to jumping. And then I saw him do something extremely counterproductive. He looked down. He looked down as if preparing for failure. Well, this is not the time to prepare for failure. In fact, what they said would happen, happened. Just before the sergeant was about to kick him out, he forced himself, hear that language, he forced himself to do something he had to do. And the prop blast, that's the propeller blast of 150 miles an hour, picked him up and slammed him against the side of the plane.
Ouch.
Now you take a bad situation and you make it worse by being ambivalent, by not being fully choosing or fully committed to it. And he was very lucky. He was black and blue, but he didn't get knocked unconscious, which can happen. But at that moment, his activity helped me discover that there's a third place, because at that moment, I made my first choice. I said to myself, I'm not going to do it that way. The next choice was, the sergeant's not going to kick me out. My third choice, I was in the door, choosing to put my hands on the outside of the plane, bend my knees, and leap as fast as I could, as strongly as I could through that prop blast, and minimize the chance of mistakes and maximize my opportunities of surviving. In fact, I cleared the plane. The sergeant gave me a perfect score. When I landed, I laughed, I rolled, I looked up and saw these other people jumping, falling over 1,000 to 1,500 feet. And I realized that I had discovered an amazing secret. There's a third place. There's not just you have to versus I don't want to. There's choice. And when you choose, there's an amazing release of energy as these other parts cooperate and participate around your leadership vision. So at the age of 22, I discovered an amazing secret. Choice. There's a third place. I did not know at that time that I was activating my human forehead, my prefrontal cortex, the only place on the planet that has the ability to choose.
Wow, awesome. You know, it's funny, I was listening to your description of a perfectly good airplane.
Yes.
and it reminded me of a few things, you know, skiing, hurtling yourself down a mountain, high speeds with no control and a pair of sticks.
Yes.
Instead of skiing, I will choose to move to Hawaii where I don't have to.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about skiing is when you're fearful and you ski like a beginner, you try to turn uphill. You're in that snowplow position, which has very little control over the skis. You're not weighting your downhill ski. It's counterintuitive to look down the hill and put your weight on your downhill ski, which will actually make you turn. That's a choice. That's counterintuitive. But that will increase your efficiency and your ability to be in control, oddly enough. Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are like that. I mean, turning a bike.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Like all of those things, like when my sister was telling me when she was learning how to ride a bike that they tell you to turn the wheel the other way to get started on your turn. And it's like, but that doesn't make sense. And yet at the same time, what I think I hear you saying is that oftentimes the right choice is counterintuitive.
Yes. And in the puritanical society that we have, at least in the States, hopefully you guys aren't quite as rigid as we are. Mm-hmm. But in the States, we have a puritanical tradition, which is try harder, put in more time, right? If the door is not opening, a Puritan will come by in one of those funny little hats and say, you're not trying hard enough. You should get up earlier and stay longer and put in 12-hour days. Well, I'm saying something that is heretical. I'm saying nature has hinged the door so it opens easily. If you're struggling and pushing and it doesn't open, my guess is it will pull open easily. It's a pull door, and you're pushing on it. If you're trying too hard and you're struggling, don't put in more time and effort. Stand back, take a look at it, and see if, in fact, it should pull open. In fact, there is something called the law of reverse effort. And I realized it. I learned it from my father. My father, who was a very good mechanic, would teach us, if you're trying to turn the handle, or you're trying to turn the valve, or you're trying to turn the faucet, and it doesn't go, you're going in the wrong direction. It's supposed to be easy. Well, that is heretical to a Puritan. It's supposed to be easy. No, life is hard, isn't it? Aren't you supposed to try harder? In fact, you hear in the press quite often, well, that person deserved it. They worked hard. Oh, my God, that's just reinforcing that concept.
Absolutely. Well, and 9 times out of 10, like even your Olympic athletes and everything like that, sure, they might put in a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't feel it's working hard because they love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I always remember Mary Lou Retton, who got the first gold medal for the United States gymnastic team, long time ago. She was 15. And she went out there and she got a perfect score when, in fact, somebody from the Soviet Union had a 9.9. And all the reporters came up to her, and some of them asked her, Mary Lou, 15 years old, they asked her, were you saying, I have to win for the United States? I have to get a gold medal. I have to be perfect. And this little 15-year-old looked at them and she shook her head and said, no, I wasn't thinking that at all. I was thinking, watch this. And that for me was like an epiphany. I go, my God. And I said to my friends who were watching the Olympics with me, I go, she doesn't have that have to inside her head, right? She's all about full commitment. It's not have to at all. There's no inner conflict with her, right? And sure enough, 8 years later, when she now was 24 and a mother of 2, I believe, she was commenting on the Olympics, and she said, you can't tell the difference between a 10 and a 9.9. You can't be worried about the judges. You just go out there and do it. And watch this is kind of an effective self-command to your mind and body that says, I'm fully choosing to be here. I'm fully committed. You watch this because you don't even have to believe that you can do it. Your ego doesn't have to feel confident or motivated in order for your higher brain to choose to show up. Choose to show up for 15 to 30 minutes. Get your procrastination inoculation. This will build your immunity against procrastination. And you will go from not knowing to knowing within as little as 2 breaths or 10 seconds, and certainly within 10 minutes, you will know something you don't know yet. That's called creativity.
I really like that. If pushing isn't working, try pulling. I used to say if you're banging your head against the wall, you probably are.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, have you ever seen one of these woven straw little puzzles? It's a tube about 5 inches long, and you stick your fingers in both ends or either end, on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
It's also called Chinese handcuffs.
Right.
Little woven straw. And you put your fingers in it, and as you pull, try to get out, you're stuck because the straw tightens. Mm-hmm. Well, I once gave them out in a lecture at a bank, and everyone had them. And I was explaining the law of reverse effort. As you pull and struggle, you get more and more stuck. The only way you get out is by relaxing and pushing inward, going in the counterintuitive opposite direction. Then the straw will relax and you can pull your fingers out. Well, while I was telling this to everyone else, The president was in the front row, stuck. He could not get out. He was from the try harder philosophy of life. You see? and so I had to I had to lead him through this relaxation exercise of doing, counterintuitive thing of releasing and going inward, and then he got free. But I couldn't use that exercise anymore because I couldn't have the president of the bank getting stuck. Yeah.
Well, mind you, he was a perfect. Depends too on the president that's like the person that's involved, because that, I mean, it's an excellent example to the workers, and as long as the guy doesn't get embarrassed.
Yeah. No, he was fine with it ultimately, and able to laugh at himself. But he's my perfect coaching client, you see, because there are people who use the try harder method, and they get through medical school, and they get through law school, and they get through college, and they get through apprenticeships and so on. And it's like driving harder and harder in first gear.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to burn out the engine. And they know by the age of 30 or 40, I've got to find an overdrive. It's got to be easier. It's like carrying a 100-pound backpack on yourself all the time. So my methods will show you optimal performance, finding overdrive where the tachometer relaxes, the engine quiets down, and you're producing 2 to 4 times as much. In fact, in some of my coaching clients have doubled their output within 2 months and doubled their income.
Wow.
By working fewer hours. So it's working using more of your brain, including the subconscious genius, including what I call the night shift, the right brain, working with less struggle, doing things more easily, communicating more effectively, so that you are performing in that zone that athletes talk about. And what's interesting about working in the zone is you are less egotistical. When they ask you, how did you do it? You don't just pound your chest and say, I did it, I deserved it. You say, I don't know. I was in the zone. And athletes know not to think about it, because if they think about it, they're out of the zone. How did I do it?
That makes a ton of sense to me, because I know over the years in, a little goofy situation, maybe playing golf or baseball or something like that, that when I would go out and try it for the first time, I always did better than when I tried the second, third, and fourth time.
Yep.
And it was because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't care.
Yeah.
But then once I thought I knew what I was doing and I started thinking about things even more, I don't relax into it, and then I overthink it, and it gets harder.
Yeah.
So that relaxed feeling is what you're talking about.
Yes, and it's using your body's own wisdom. The body has wisdom about, physics, anatomy. After all, your body knows how to make over 5 million healthy new red blood cells every minute. And you don't have to know much about biology or anatomy. So it is really what I call the arrogant, lonely struggle of ego to be separating yourself from that ability and that wisdom, which is, as some musicians I've worked with would say, thinking is stinking.
I like that.
Yeah. It's separating the mind from the body, Instead of going into chi, going lower in the body, that place chi below the belly button, they call it in the martial arts, hara, actually, Hara. That spot where the flow of energy is, where you are stronger when you move your hips rather than just struggling with your separated arm, trying to use your muscles and quite often furrowing your brow and tightening your jaw, which have absolutely nothing to do with a golf swing or a tennis swing, for example, or throwing a ball. It's actually off the back foot, connected to the earth. There's a sense of connection as opposed to separate. So let me give your listeners an exercise.
Beautiful. Okay.
In Awaken Your Strongest Self, I start off with something called the essential exercise, and that is to put a arm out at shoulder height, holding a cup or a book. Hold that out And imagine that that hand and arm is your conscious mind and ego, separate from the rest of your body, working alone all week long, holding that task out there, that cup or that book. After a while, it's going to get tired. Your shoulder will get tired, and you're going to think about donuts or coffee or smoking or alcohol or your favorite distraction, perhaps surfing the net. But it is lonely out there, and it's difficult out there. Once you see that that is your default way of working with just your conscious mind, just your struggling muscles, notice it and connect your elbow to your hip, to your side, and discover as you bring your arm in how much easier it is when your arm and hand or your ego and conscious mind are connected not only to your body, but also to the chair, the floor, the earth, the building. There's connection. You're no longer separate. If your other hand is free, you would put it underneath that book or cup to represent the support of your autonomic nervous system and your subconscious genius, the rest of your brain. Now you only work connected. You do not work separate. And yet the default position of the ego and conscious mind is the arrogant, lonely struggle of ego and your identity, split from the rest of your body, the wisdom in your body, the genius in your subconscious and in your larger brain. So we want to shift very rapidly from struggle, furrowing the brow, to bringing everything in, operating connected, left brain with right brain, conscious mind with subconscious. Greater sense of connection. And that can be a commitment, a vision, a leadership vision, that I always work with my full brain. I always work connected. I don't want any ego parts of me out there saying, but it's hard, it's difficult. Yes, it is difficult out there alone. Come and join the rest of the team. This is an integrated effort.
That makes a ton of sense to me, because one of the things that I've noticed, again, observing myself, because I make, as I say, an excellent science experiment, is that I have noticed over the years that my brain, my mind, my ego, tries to do the job of its job and my spirit's job, my intuition, my creativity. It tries to do all of the jobs all by itself over in the corner.
Yep.
And that's not its job. It's trying to do everybody else's job too.
Yep.
And how much easier would it be for my mind if it allowed the rest of me to do what it's supposed to do too?
Exactly right. Yeah, and it's arrogant because it thinks it does it. And it thinks that the only way to do it is to stay up longer, worry about it in the night, and create insomnia, and become hypervigilant. When in fact, most of the work, most of the heavy lifting is done by the autonomic nervous system and by the dreaming mind and the subconscious. That's why I say it's the arrogant, lonely struggle. So I want to replace all of those. All right, I want to be connected with the rest of the brain, the rest of the body, and with the humus that makes us human and humble. Mm-hmm. I believe humus, or earth, is the root word for human and humble.
Well, I think, too, that over the years we've kind of trained that way of being in. You know, the mind has been what people, what society has acknowledged. You know, your whatever degree you might have, you know, all of the mind things are the things that we end up acknowledging. How many hours do you put in? Mm-hmm. All of those kinds of things, and don't really put a whole lot of importance on the rest of it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love Dan Goleman's books on emotional intelligence. Mm. You know, there is an intuitive intelligence. There's a physical intelligence that people have. There's a musical intelligence that people have. You know. These people may not have performed very well in school, but they definitely have a wisdom about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And by the way, the intelligence tests are only about testing how well you bought the party line and the degree to which you can recite back what the school has.
Yes. How well have you memorized what we told you?
Exactly right.
Absolutely. Okay, so your new book is coming out in August, and that's The Now Habit at Work.
Yes, and this is for business people. This is for entrepreneurs. This is for working mothers. Am I leaving anyone out? It's geared toward, as a friend said, oh, you mean using psychology, psych stuff at work? Yeah, that's right. So we're applying skills and strategies from psychology and optimal performance and peak performance work that I do with athletes and applying it to the work situation. So this book is more about optimal performance and efficiency and overcoming workaholism. The Now Habit, the first book, A Strategic Program for Overcoming Procrastination, is with guilt-free play, is a strategic program for overcoming procrastination. This focus will be more on optimal performance and applied much more to the workplace. Yeah. And then Awaken Your Strongest Self really is a manual of the kind of therapy and habit change work that I do. It's more encompassing. It's about integrating all the parts of you around your higher brain and your higher self.
Well, you know what? I think we're going to have to bring you back to talk more about that one.
Oh, I'd love to. And that one is a little bit more, some people call it spiritual, you know?
Yeah, that's totally up my alley.
Yeah, well, you see, one definition of spiritual is that there is something wiser in the universe than my ego. That ego part that you talked about, struggling alone, you see.
Yeah. Well, there's more to me than just that, and I know there is.
You are more than who you think you are.
Exactly.
Think about that now. The biggest controller of your life is your identity. Expand or change your identity or get rid of identity. All right, and then you become an existential improv, an ongoing improv. You're not tied down to I am this age, I am this sex, I am this race. You be very careful about what you put after I am. For example, I am depressed, I am a procrastinator. I listen very, very hard to those things when I hear it from my clients. Okay. Yeah.
And I played with that. I am the queen of joy. I am the ruler of my domain, which is my joy.
Ah, wonderful. That's a good one.
Well, that's the end of that interview with Neil. I hope that you enjoyed that interview and that you benefited from that in-depth look at procrastination, this summary of what we talked about over the last few weeks. When I say few weeks, it's been almost 11 weeks, I think, that we've talked about this particular topic. So next week, we are going to see how viewing your life as an experiment is a tremendous way of doing life. And we're talking with Timothy Moser of aceproductivity.com next week. Then after that, unless I decide that I just really want to do one or two one-off type of topical shows, we are going to begin to look at the issue of saying no in more depth, more about assertiveness. And the books we will use is the Assertiveness Workbook is going to be our main text that we're going to work through. And as a supplementary text, there's a book called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And both of those books are in the show notes. If you go to firstthingsproductivity.com/28, then you will find links to that book, and you can go on there, you can purchase that book, and you can get it for Kindle. I haven't checked for iBooks, or I don't have a Nook, so I don't really know if it's available there, but you can also buy used copies on Amazon. So if this sounds like a topic that you need to listen to, if it's really sounding interesting to you, then I would encourage going ahead and picking up these books, because we're going to get into an in-depth study, and you're going to want to have those materials around to study. As always, I would appreciate you leaving me comments on anywhere that you're listening to me, including Zune, BlackBerry, iTunes, wherever you are listening to me. I would greatly appreciate the comments. And again, if you have any comments on this particular episode, this interview with Neil, then I have a discussion area set up at firstthingsproductivity.com/28. Again, remember the Creative Live voting for me. I would greatly appreciate if you consider doing that. Again, over the topics of procrastination, overcoming procrastination, over the topic of statistics for the statistically challenged. And you can go to firstthingsproductivity.com/yes to actually vote for me. And you can put my website, firstthingsproductivity.com, as a point of contact on there. So until next time, remember to embrace your now moment. Embrace the now moment and push off procrastination toward greater things in your life. Embrace today with passion and intention, and don't die with your music still inside you.